If you're looking to put yourself in the best position to stand out during the interview process for a software engineering opening, there are 3 things you need to know how to do. My name is Will Elliott. I'm a software engineering manager leading a team of 7 developers, and I've interviewed handfuls of candidates over the years, and I have a good feel for what hiring managers are looking for in a candidate. I will cover 3 steps you should follow to best prepare for an interview. Let's jump right into it. First, you're going to want to do your homework. Analyze the job description for the role you're applying for. So for this example, I'm going to look at this Microsoft Senior Software Engineering role. So look at the job description. I can tell that this is for the Microsoft Azure storage team. It requires 5 to 7 years of experience with C#, C++, or Java programming. Requires computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering background, on and on. Kind of the typical things that they'd be looking for are in the qualifications, and then there's some good details in the responsibilities as well. So you want to look in the responsibilities and the qualification sections of each description. Next, you want to do a brief review of the company. You're going to know their business model, how they make money, and some important people. So what I would do is I would look up how Microsoft makes money. Here's an old annual report that Microsoft put out. So you can read the business description, the year it's founded, their mission statement, which is pretty important to know when you're going in an interview process, because it tells you how they see the world, how they envision their company helping the world, and how they like their technology to help in this case. And also a nice tidbit here is it shows how they make revenue. So developing, licensing, and supporting software products, hardware, software, and delivering advertising to a global customer audience. So you want to know some of this information. So the next thing I did, since this was an Azure posting, is get a little description on what Azure is. So Azure is Microsoft's cloud platform with a wide variety of products, and for this case we'd be looking at storage specifically. So one thing I might look into is some of these high-level details, and then maybe dig into their storage offerings. The next thing I would do is search the internet for job posting sites for hints on what you might expect for questions during the interview process. So during my research for this Microsoft posting, I actually found on the Microsoft career website, they give some interview tips for how to get hired at the company. Another good website is Glassdoor. They have a bunch of interview reviews from people that have actually applied and gone through the interview process, and they'll give you some samples of the questions that they went through. So that's a good resource to have as well. Next, you want to prepare your questions in advance. Most people overlook this, and this is a big mistake. Almost all interviews will leave some time for questions at the end, and this is your chance to drive the conversation and ask questions that can highlight your skills and potential to succeed in the role. I took some classes in my computer science mastery program on distributed systems and cloud computing, so some good questions I could ask are, how does the Azure storage team weigh the CAP theorem? Which of the 3 options in consistency, availability, or partition tolerance do you sacrifice, and what was the rationale for it? This question will let the interviews know that I have some baseline knowledge of the distributed systems and could lead into an interesting discussion on the design architecture of their platform. Another question could be, how does the Azure distributed storage systems fetch and return queries or data values back to the caller? Does the system leverage peer-to-peer distributed hash tables to identify a node that owns a key value pair? Or are there other mechanisms used? How is fault tolerance handled and replication handled? Again, this type of question dives deep into the core of their system and shows that I'm interested in the subject matter and have a sense of possible architectures that they might have used. The second thing you want to do is self-evaluate. If you haven't yet applied, you should really take 20 minutes to clean up your resume and remove fluff. For example, you should remove any programming languages that you don't actively use or wouldn't feel comfortable talking about in an interview process. Anything you put on your resume is a potential talking point during the interview, so don't make a mistake of putting web development skills on your resume, and then when asked about it, you have to explain that you did some basic HTML and CSS back in high school a decade ago. It's really hard to recover from a misstep like that during a short interview. Know each piece of information on your resume and be able to expand upon it if asked during the interview process. Next, you want to think about how to tie your resume experiences and skills to the job description of the role you're applying for. For me, I will talk about my years of experience in C# development, also my experience leading a team of software engineers responsible for the software development lifecycle of our releases. I would also discuss my course in parallel computing and distributed systems in my master's degree in computer science at the University of Illinois, and I would also mention my experience using SQL Server. Last step is to practice and prepare. If the HR recruiter sets up your interviews in advance and tells you who will be interviewing you, it's a good piece of information that you can use to take to your advantage. Look them up on LinkedIn or do a quick Google search. Look for possible connections that you can make or career insights on potential form a good question from the interview. So using my LinkedIn as an example, what you could do is read my About section to kind of get a feel for the type of work I do and see if you have any existing knowledge on that, and you can ask questions around that. Another good section is to go look at their education experience and see if you went to the same school. That might be a good thing to connect about during the interview. And also you can kind of look at either groups that they're in to see kind of what their interests are in. So like I'm in some data science groups, so maybe asking me about data science or algorithmic trading would be interesting talking points during the interview process. Next, you're really going to dial in on how you're going to present yourself and body of work to the interviewers. A lot of the time an interview will start by asking for a brief walkthrough of your resume or to explain the background before diving into the bulk of the interview. This is an opportunity to answer this question differently than a large majority of the candidate pool, which will just chronologically regurgitate the resume. You should instead reframe the question as your 2-minute pitch, an opportunity to sell yourself. As you can tell, I haven't once mentioned anything about the technical portion of the interview yet. One, because as a hiring manager, I never ask the stereotypical algorithms, recursion, or list sorting coding problems. I frankly don't care that you studied for 2 months on these problems that have no real correlation to the type of work that you'll be doing. I can tell from talking to a candidate if they have adequate technical aptitude to succeed, and I'm typically more concerned about the team fit. All that to say that there are some companies, particularly FANG companies, that there's no avoiding these coding interview problems. There are hundreds of great resources on how to prepare here to do your best, so get comfortable answering these types of questions using other resources. A lot of candidates go into the interview process without a strategy. They're usually too worried about the coding interviews and practicing leak code, which is an important part for some of the software engineering hiring processes, but if you cover your bases on the 3 topics I discussed, you're well on your way to a well-prepared interview. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video and would like similar content in the future. See you in the next one.